I don't remember.
There.
Tire fire.
Yeah, exactly. It was one, you know, he's like, you guys really think I'm
Like,
crazy.
somebody to check it out.
But yeah, and I mean, less so than like specific wines, it's really having a thumbnail sketch for the region. So you can, you know, for me, I always start with, you know, Willamette Valley. It's kind of in between Burgundy and California, you know, it's earthy, but still has some fruit. And then from there, you know, you kind of pick out the ones you're familiar with. But just having a thumbnail for the overall region is a good
That's
Yeah, you're the perfect candidate for this. Because this is what this tasting is
Yeah.
actually all about.
Yeah, I bet I'm gonna have a kind of.
Yeah, so in one way or another, I've been doing this kind of presentation, and I used to call it Intro to Wine, and it's been revamped a bunch of different times. And then Mike came up with the idea of great wines being easy, which sounded much better than Intro to Wine. We always had a hard time selling tickets to Intro to Wine because no one wants to be a novice at drinking, or at least not in this state. So my hope is that I have a couple of goals for us, and then a couple of goals that I would want for clients as well. So for us, I really wanted to present this tasting to you because it's how I think about wines and how I hear my thoughts about wines. And I really appreciate the easy part of the title of this presentation because I actually think wines are fairly easy. And they do start to break down very easily. And I think it really only takes about 3 methods of evaluation of them, and then really only 5 more things to categorize the entire wine world. So certainly on the client side, even though I don't work the floor a lot anymore, I used to hear like, oh, wines are too complex or too confusing. With my recent embarking into restaurants, working with restaurant managers, some of them are very resistant to learning wine. They think it is simpler to turn it over to a liquor house and just do it. But again, I think wine really will break down into some simple, easy things. So I've been tasting and doing these presentations now for 16 years. I have a cross combination of, I actually have a higher ed degree, if you believe that. So some of the way I present comes from that. My main way of learning actually comes from the Hugh Johnson Atlas, which I like and reference all the time. I did take a couple of WSET classes and Master Somm classes, enjoyed them, but I prefer my way of thinking about them. So this is our chance to taste, and that's one of my major goals. The other major goal for this is, because there are 3 stores and only one of me, I want each store to always have these presentations, and that means I have to train others in how to do these presentations. So the hope is, and we've been doing this now, we started during the pandemic thinking we would take these videos public, and actually they've worked much better privately. I don't expect you to go back and watch these videos, but for my store managers, when they're commuting in, whatever, they can listen to what I'm saying, so then the night they have to do the presentation, they've got something to present about. So 2 major goals for us today. Now, overall, I think most of us have tasted together, but I'll start with my generic start to every presentation that I do, which is that I say I'm Ben and I'm the owner of Waterford, and we're going to taste 10 wines tonight. 9 wines in a series of 3 flights, so 3 wines each flight. Each flight is divided into a theme. The overarching theme of this is going to be Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, so each flight has some of both. But really we're focusing on, I guess, 2 different things here. One is to get the structure that I just talked about, how I think about wines. And then with each flight there's going to be story time, because each of these wines I have a story for, and Pat has some stories too. So we get a little story time. So future presenters of this may have little different bits of story time to go to, but I'm hoping that the structure of why we're tasting these holds too. So with that, 9 wines plus the bonus gives you the 10. In general, I'll go from left to right across the tasting sheet. You guys can feel free to smell back and forth and taste back and forth at any time. I think it's fun if you leave just a little bit in the glass for when I get to it. Sometimes I go on too long, but otherwise just keep tasting and smelling. And these presentations are way more fun if you're tasting and smelling by the time. So feel free to go ahead. And I will get out that folder too. So I do have, you guys will have to let me know, I do have a couple of bonus bottles from my own cellar that I brought up. One of the fun things about having long-term staff members and also supporting wineries and winemakers for many vintages is that we have the ability to see them age, and we can talk about how they age, and I really believe in that. So I have some back vintages of wines for us to taste. Now, I also have found for clients, 10 wines is the nice apex of they're just tipsy enough that the wallet comes out. But if you take it beyond 10, then they're beyond tipsy and they forget to take the wallet out. So while I'm not necessarily pitching or teaching to you guys to make money, let me know if we start tasting too much so you guys don't have to follow around. That's so. Okay. Now, great wines made easy. With these, and I'd like you to think of this, this would be the first steps that I would tell you in the easy part. And those first steps are, in my experience, there are 3 ways to evaluate wine in the most generic sense. And I'm missing a whiteboard and I'm feeling it's lag because normally I write them at this point. But those 3 ways are, first, do I like it? And I think that's actually really important. And I think it's something that everyone can say usually when they smell and taste. Do I like the wine? Now, I think it's interesting because we can delve a little bit deeper. And what I would say is that I hope once you've finished with this tasting, or if you're working with clients on the floor, you're able to give just a bit more information. Doesn't necessarily change if they like it or not, but I think just like in music, if you learn a little bit more about music, it suddenly makes it much more engaging. I recently had the pleasure of listening to a course about Beethoven's First Symphony. It's his least radical one, but the professor was at pains to explore the structure of how even in that First Symphony, Beethoven was altering everything that had been done before him in terms of how symphonies work. And that's what I hope we can do here. Explore a little bit deeper so that we can go a little bit beyond I like it, but never lose the understanding or the ability to say whether I like it or not. Frankly, I have seen a lot of master somms, a lot of, not as many master of wines because there aren't as many floating around in Wisconsin, but I have seen a lot of master somms lose the ability to say whether they like a wine or don't like a wine. And that makes them really boring to drink with and not fun either. So always keep in mind, always think, do I like it or don't I like it? And I think also realize, and you've all heard this a million times, that wine is subjective. So if you like it or don't like it, and your husband or wife likes it or doesn't like it, it doesn't really matter, it's your choice. Now, the second way of evaluating wines is simply, what is it? And this is the one that master somms get so into. It's the one that the somm movies are about. It's the one that is kind of dominant of a paradigm in this day and age, is my experience with it as the rise of somm culture has come. So what is it? And that really revolves around the ability to smell a wine without seeing its label, and then going and guessing or approximating or just knowing what the wine is. You know, I think it's an interesting sport to do. It is extremely, in my experience of having done it, wonderful to start developing your thought processes about wines. I also think it's a great way to suddenly go overboard and forget the first part, which is, do I like it? It is also, for us as a team trying to sell wine, really annoying when people start talking about it in that way of what is it. So I prefer you don't necessarily emphasize what is it. The other thing I found though with that is, to me, it's sort of like food. The reason we know the difference between some common flavors in food, even if they're close, like I always say hamburger and filet mignon, the reason we know those flavors are different is because we've had them repeatedly over our lives. Whereas with the vast world of wine, unless you're me, you probably haven't repeatedly had a particular field of wines over and over and over again. But what I'd like for you guys to do as a staff is a simple structure, and this is getting to your thought process of organizing the world of wine. And what I'd like you to do is just start clustering wines together. So if you're tasting Pinots, you use the structure that we're going to talk about in flights 2 and 3 to think about what Pinot Noir means to you. And then when you hit another category, Cabernet, think about what Cabernet means to you, what flavors you associate with Cabernet. And then you can do it intra and inter as well, meaning what are the flavor differences you associate with Pinot and Cabernet, you know, those two. Or within the field of Pinot, what are the flavor differences that you associate with red Burgundy versus Gordon Pinot or California. So again, a simple, easy structure that builds around the idea of what is it, but hopefully not the complex technical game that that master songs do. Now, again, keep drinking. So you're holding these two thoughts. Do you like it? And what is it? So you got those two, and you can probably get those two down on paper real quick. The final thing I'd like you to think about, or the final way of evaluating wines is what is its worth? And actually, this is where I spend almost my entire professional time, is what is its worth? Because I'm in charge of most of the big buying, which also means that I'm in charge of all the big selling. So I need to know what the wine is worth. And for me, this is a wonderful thing to do, and I think it's applicable to all of our clients because everyone has this as an issue. If our budget is above $100 a bottle, it's easy to find a good wine. If our budget is $4 a bottle, it's a lot harder to find a good wine. So it's very important. What is the wine worth? And with this, I'll be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you because I'm trying to work logistic chains to drive the prices down to get them to where I think they are. For us as a team on the sales floor though, I think it's important to, again, start taking those clusters of wines you have and thinking about them in terms of their price and in terms of what prices they can hit. If we go back to thinking, say, about Cabernet, and we know that Cabernet can come from anywhere, so it can hit $4 a bottle. And then, of course, the sky's the limit with Cabernet. But what we could also then do is look further into that and start thinking about Napa Cabernet. And of course, many of our clients love Napa Cabernet. Before the pandemic, people had the ability to visit. It's a beautiful place to visit, and so it's incredibly popular. But in terms of value in Napa Cabernet, because of the cost of grapes and because of the price of land, most Napa, in fact, all Napa Cabernet really can't achieve a price below $20 a bottle. It's just not possible to do. Sometimes there's a fluke, but relatively that's the entry point. The average of Napa Cabernet now kind of sits at $50 a bottle, and most Napa wineries like the structure of 50 for the blend, 75 for the main Cabernet, and 125 for the reserve. So I know that, but what that means is our value metrics for thinking about Napa Cabernet have to be a little bit different than thinking about worldwide Cabernet. Same thing if we think about Cabernet from Bordeaux, Pinot Noir from Burgundy. The value proposition is different. Again, I think it just means that my job, and our job too, but mostly my job, is to try and find the best wine that I can for our clients in a particular category. So if I can find a Napa Cabernet for $14.99, I think that's a really good deal, as long as it tastes good. That's not terrible, but I think that's an extreme value. Okay, and again, I think for all of our clients, that's an approach that everyone actually takes, so you're not really learning anything. The one thing I would say for you on the sales floor is never underestimate our clients. So please never ask them the question of what is your budget or what is your price. When you're working on your clusters of wine, thinking about evaluating wine, just make sure that you have 3 options, one low, one medium, one high. Mention all 3, mention why you like all 3, and then you can leave it at that. Don't go for what is your budget tonight. That's an easy question to fall into, but it's one of the most stunting in terms of what we're gonna sell. Okay, so 3 ways to evaluate wine. I will say, again, and I wouldn't say this if it wasn't a staff training, one of the most effective ways to sell wine is if you like it and you can express why you like it. And that is extremely effective at selling wine. There was a lady, one of my dear friends, and she also worked for me. She loved Villa Gucci Reserve, and that is a $50 Verdicchio from the marquee. And her way of selling it was to go and point at it, and she did this wonderfully, not horribly. She'd go, "Oh, that wine," and that would sell that wine. Yeah, so you're talking about a far-flung wine, but if you like it and can put real emotion behind it, people will follow you to it. And don't do it fake. We've got a lot of hidden things in here to love that you guys can do it. So, okay, so that's the first 3 structures of how I'd like you to think about wine. So I think easy enough because certainly 2 come naturally. Do you like it, and do you think it was a value? The other one of what is it starts to build, but we're going to shift how we're going to build and make it easy for us to start building clusters and pots in the second and third flight. So now let's go to story time about these wines and give you something to say about them. You know, when you approach a customer, and this is why I like to do staff trainings and why I'm willing to invest in expensive bottles to do it, what I'd like you all to do is when we taste the wine, I'd like you to walk away with at least 2 sentences that you can say about it. The first sentence is your intro sentence, just something you know about the wine. It can be really anything. And your second sentence is just a follow-up, meaning you say, "I like it," the customer says why, and you say, "Well, I had it at my anniversary, it just turned out to be a perfect fit, made the evening wonderful." You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be about the wine, but it's around the wine, something to say. So as we taste, I'm going to talk about the wines, whatever sticks in your head, whether it's a flavor, whether it's something I say, amazingly enough, anything about it, just get 1 line down and then go for the second one so when you're on the floor you can talk about it. So I was introduced to Lemelson in 2009 when I was at Oregon Pinot Camp. Lemelson is actually a fairly new winery for Oregon. I think it was founded in 2002. It's Ted Lemelson? I'm almost positive. It is Eric, you're right. Eric Lemelson actually happens to be quite an interesting man who also had quite an interesting father. Now, the father is actually the reason that there's a beanie on the label, and then there's a couple of other things. But if you look up Lemelson and Lemelson Foundation, Eric's father was an inventor, a self-employed, lifelong inventor. He invented the beanie hat. He actually invented Hot Wheels racetrack. He invented one of the first supercomputers as well. He just tons and tons of different inventions and sort of across the entire gamut from kids' toys to missiles. Just a crazy amount of inventions that he did. He was also, I don't know him or didn't know him, but he also never associated himself with the company. So he also spent a lifetime in lawsuits suing about the patents. In any case, he did, for one of his later inventions, become quite a wealthy man, and he established a foundation as well. His son, Ted, was a lawyer, maybe because of his father's litigation, was a lawyer working in Portland and Oregon, was very interested in environmental causes, went to a wine dinner one night that was about Oregon Pinot Noir, fell in love with the idea of Pinot Noir, the flavors of Pinot, the suppleness of Pinot. He's a man with some means. Oregon would have been less expensive in the early 2000s, so he went and he bought a vineyard, and I think he now has like 4 different vineyards and a winery. So now fully functioning as a winery, honors his dad with a little beanie on his hat. I think his mom works at the winery as well. So I like this wine because it's Oregon Pinot, and this is a little bit of the flavor building, but it's a rather rich interpretation of Oregon Pinot. It's fuller fruit on the nose, and I think it's also fuller on the palate. And all of the years that I've had Lemelson, it's always been that way. So it's kind of always a richer style of Oregon Pinot. I think it's a fun one to recommend to customers because of that. I think the richer style fits customers more, or excuse me, you can introduce a richer style easier than something that's a little bit greener. We'll taste that second, third flight. So all of that is why we have Lemelson here today. You also notice this is 16 or 17. I think the bottle.
17.
Yeah, good. We got the right bottle. Lemelson, I think it's slow sales, but I'm not sure. Lemelson releases later. And again, I'm not sure if that's a commercial decision of theirs or just something that happened or happenstance. So they will be a full vintage in bottle behind most other Oregon Pinots, which I think really means that it gets smoother and more supple right out of the gates when you get it. I'm not sure he made an 18 vintage because of smoke. So we'll see. Yeah, I think it's 18 in Oregon, and most of those are smoky and have smoke taint. So.
And is Taya his daughter for today's selection, or mother or daughter?
But it's
Oh, well, it might be his
no,
daughter.
dog is Tika.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I think
Daughter.
I think it's mom.
Mom, okay.
Yeah, I think
Because I think
mom
he's
is-
got another one named after the daughter.
Yeah, Dorothy.
But generally when there's like a daughter or a mother's name, and when it says someone's selection, usually it's the mother or the daughter. So if you can just quickly Google like who it is, it's always a great sell. Like, you know, winemakers always name their best wines after their mother/daughter, depending.
Oh.
Like, put it in somebody's hand and they'll just fall in love with it just because of that. So now here with this next one, this is René Leclerc, and it's Bourgogne Rouge. So it's a red burgundy. If you don't have a ton of experience with red burgundy, I'm gonna gloss over almost all of it, and we'll just have to tackle it another tasting. But what I wanted us to note here is that this is part of that development of your palate. Of if you get the question, or you ever feel the question of, I get this somewhat, you know, I can't tell wines apart, I just drink them. Well, here I think is a chance where you can smell back and forth and taste back and forth, and these two things do taste and smell differently than one another. So this is the part of building up your palate, of understanding the realm of Pinot Noir, but also how it differs. And we'll get into that more in the second flame. With this, yeah, I actually like this domain quite a lot, and I like René's wines quite a lot. So, René works entirely within a village called Gevrey-Chambertin, which is in Burgundy. He would love it if Gevrey-Chambertin had a designation like what we're going to see in Chablis, where Chablis has Chablis and then Petit Chablis. So it's not generic Bourgogne, it's not a generic Burgundy, it associates it with the proper village. The reason he would like that is because he's 100% in Gevrey-Chambertin, which is a high rent district in Burgundy, but there's no petite Gevrey-Chambertin that he can list into, so he's got to drop this down to Bourgogne Rouge. So this is one of our many domains that we support at Waterford that are actually labeled as something lower than what the quality of the fruit is going into making the wine. That's one of the reasons I really like this wine, is I think it's Burgundy, so it's not cheap, but it can have some dynamic value pricing for us, for our clients. So again, the guy's name is René Leclerc, and it's labeled Bourgogne Rouge. He would prefer to call it Petit Gevrey. If I'm really speaking French to you right now, don't worry. We'll do another training that's all Burgundy and catch you up on it. So, here, he also likes to have another saying, which is he doesn't want the wines to have any makeup. So he doesn't want any new oak or any additives to show in the wine. So he wants it just to be a pure expression of his fruit.
Sorry, was that, he does good stainless, you say, or?
All old wood, but no new wood. So, okay, now, let me, if you guys are prepared, here's a fun one. Now, let me give a bit of a backdrop here. I can remember when I first started professionally tasting Burgundy, I could not make heads or tails out of it. The whites were fine. I could get into the whites. The reds, I just could not understand. One, they were really expensive. Two, they were really tart. And three, they were also low on fruit. And we're going to talk about all of those in the next flight. And what I have found is that's all still true. They're generally tart, lower on fruit, and more acidic. And so I can understand if clients come and don't like Burgundy, particularly red Burgundy. In fact, the differential between Farwell and Delafield is if I buy, let's say, 100 cases of Burgundy, like red Burgundy, probably 95% would sell at Delafield or at Farwell in downtown Milwaukee, and 5 at Delafield. All of this is to say is I think it's a little bit of a palate that has some development headroom going to it. But it's also something where I want all the stores to be able to talk about and sell Burgundy. Commercially, we're the only wine shop anywhere near here that does Burgundy to the significance that we do. So it's commercially really important. It is a niche, so when you break into it or get customers into it, there's no one who can follow us in terms of competition with the Burgundy that we do and the pricing that we have. So it's extremely important for us to do Burgundy. But here,
Is that both in white and red sleeping?
yeah, red is harder than white. White is kind of the gateway drug, and we'll talk about why. But red I've seen be much harder to do.
Okay.
So, yeah. So here, what I wanted to show you is I sold running 13, so this is my 6th going on 7th. So what you have now is a 2015 and a 2019. So I was going to say it's the same wine, but it's obviously not the same wine. But it's the same guy making it from the same vineyards and going back and forth and smelling them. I think really fascinating. Yeah, that 15 is just amazing.
So are we selling the 15 and the 17 or the
No.
19? Okay.
Just the 19.
Reseller.
Yeah, so this is the hard trick, and this is why I usually don't taste back vintages with clients, because they'll try and order the one that they like, which is usually the older one. And so what we have to do as a staff is be able to say, well, here's what you're getting, but here's where it's going and how it will become. If you taste the 19, I actually think 19 was a pretty fantastic vintage for him. It's a little bit heavier in fruit than what the 15 ever was. So I think it's going to be a really special wine as it goes in time. It just needs a little bit of time.
And so that's similar amount of time?
Both are really great vintages, so I would guess about the same amount of time. And I try, with our major Burgundy email specials, I'm generally trying to buy some myself and hold back so that we can do this kind of thing and check on it. So I can tell people, staff and clients, like, I really think his wines show amazing year 4. You know, I mean, that's hard on the sales floor because a lot of people don't want to wait, but if you have an idea of what they're going to be.
I've always found it just fascinating to try something over time.
Yeah, no, and I love seeing them really young when they're zingy and tight, and I love seeing them really old when they're savory.
Yeah.
So I love, the entire arc of the experience of it, as opposed to trying to hunt down that golden peak.
It's also fun though, and my honest opinion is to try it week to week.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or month to month.
Mhm. Yeah.
6 over the next 6 months type thing.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just wonderful. You're different as well.
No, it's one of the things I love about wine.
So how many years in the bottle?
Here, I'll be.
Or how many bottles do you buy?
The most I've ever done is 12.
Okay.
And I haven't drunk them all over 12 years.
Okay.
Not that long. Not that patient.
Yeah.
But nevertheless,
If I just came down.
it's
Here, why don't you take one of these down and I'm sure pass it around. Thanks.
It's usually we try to buy 3 bottles of whatever we're getting, one right away, and then hold on to the other one for a
this matches the tasting sheet for this right now. Sorry, we're talking about last week. So this is an extremely important white burgundy producer for us. If you don't know what white burgundy is, it's Chardonnay. Now, white burgundy at all stores, and I would include that here, is a real gateway for people. And it's a gateway because it tends to be a white wine that drinks like a red, meaning it's really kind of about its structure, its intensity, its feel on the palate. So it's really kind of a big red wine experience, but in a white wine. And then quite frankly, it's a white wine that men feel comfortable buying, right? We do have that section of clientele where a man feels like he should be drinking big red wine. White burgundy is big white wine, so they'll go for it. I also frankly have had the experience of like, we're having a dinner party, but there's no way I'm having red wine on my new white carpets. I've had the sales experience of, well, I'm buying $70 Caymus and my wife wants Chardonnay, so I feel ridiculous if I show up with cupcake. You know, like, so all of those. But basically, to me, I think it drinks incredibly wonderfully. Just as a category, I absolutely adore white burgundy and just think it's amazing stuff. Again, it's 100% Chardonnay. Now here with this producer, this is a producer that has a very similar story that Renee McClurk and Jeffrey Showerton. We're just going to shift the village. This is Paul Pernot. Paul Pernot actually served as a gunman in World War II, and then after World War II returned to his family village in Bellini, Montreuil. The amazing insight for him is he started buying land. So he's still alive. I think he's 96, and that's what you guys but he's been buying land. He's a major landowner in the village of Bellini, Montreuil. Again, if I'm speaking French to you, just roll with it. The important thing to realize is Bellini, Montreuil is the highest ranked district in the world for Chardonnay. The world's most expensive Chardonnays come from Bellini, Montreuil. Now, again, maybe that doesn't mean anything, but I think the wine shows that it in fact does really mean something. Now, the best label, or before we start that again, all of his fruit, all of his land is in the village of Bellini. So most Bellini Montreuil start at the price you see at $50, and then the sky is the limit. So here, even though it's Bourgogne Côte d'Or, which would technically be a lower classification, it is 100% Bellini Montreuil fruit. So we'll get to the end when we have the price list, and you'll see some of the price differences, but this one is always an amazing value for us. We do tend to sell out of this one. We don't have it year round. We got a lot in early December, so we have it now. But if it's something that someone likes, it is a come and go one for us. I bought a monstrous amount of it this year, but again, you'll notice it's really young. It's 2020. His winery sits at a high water table, so he's got no cellar. So he can't hold the wines that long. So he's always one of the first of the new vintage release for us to get. So he releases as soon as he's got to put the new wine in his cellar. So we got this in time in December, but it's a fast release for us. I do have 2013 of this bottling in my cellar, and it's astoundingly amazing right now. Yeah, it's just gorgeous, so it will age really well. I didn't bring it for you guys because we excessive amounts of bonus rounds, and we don't actually remember what we bonus on. So, okay.
So when you said that he doesn't have it available year round, is that because of his cellar situation? He has to just get it in bottles and get it out?
Yeah, well, if he could slow it down, I think he would. It's more, Burgundy is a different way of doing business than the rest of the wine world. If you're gonna do Burgundy well, you need to go to Burgundy, and then when you taste, you need to buy it, and that's it, because then it's gone. The area is small enough that once it's gone, and most of the producers are small enough that they can't make more, it's gone. It's why you don't see wine shops with robust, except us.
Right.
It's why you don't see wine shops with robust Burgundy collections, is because It's really hard to learn. It's very complex. It's difficult to buy. And you have to essentially train your wholesaler to come with you and do the same thing. Like I had to train my wholesaler how I wanted her to buy these wines, but even though I'm the one buying them, because I have to have a middleman.
Yeah.
I mean, she also has trained me significantly too. But it's one of the reasons retailers don't do bourbon. It's too hard. It's really difficult, and then it's done. And it's understandably annoying for clients. You like Paul Pernod, and we're out of it. You know, and sometimes we're out of it in a week. Yeah. So. Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah.